Today, we see drones everywhere, from the war in Ukraine to discussions about deliveries. But have you ever stopped to think about what life is like for the person who operates these machines? In this video, we are going to dive into the brutal reality of a combat drone operator. We are going to understand the tension of making life or death decisions from 12,000 kilometers away, and most importantly, what the psychological price is that is paid when the shift ends. And a warning. If you think this job looks like a video game, what you are going to hear here will change your perspective. This is the real story, unfiltered, of what it's like to go home and have dinner with the family after watching horrible things on a screen all day. With drone warfare becoming the new global reality, understanding the human side of it has never been so urgent. And we are going to do this from the perspective of someone who was there, Tanner Yackley. He served almost 10 years in the US Air Force as an MQ-9 Reaper sensor operator, accumulating over 3,000 combat hours. What he is going to tell us here is everything he is allowed to say. Right off the bat, even before we dive into the details of Tanner's story, what do you think is the hardest part psychologically? Is it the responsibility of making a life or death decision? Or is it this craziness of being in a war 12,000 kilometers away? And minutes later, having to go have dinner with the family as if it were a normal day? Leave your honest opinion here in the comments. The strangest thing about this job, according to Tanner, is the distance. He was sitting in a chair in the United States, but the target was 12,000 kilometers away. He was in a situation where he needed to make the decision to eliminate someone or watch horrible things on the screen without being able to do anything. And the most surreal part, he says, is what comes after. The shift would end, he would get in the car and go home to deal with normal life, dinner, kids' birthdays. It's a crazy mix of two lives. And the MQ-9 Reaper is not a store-bought drone. It's a real plane with a 20-meter wingspan flying at 9 kilometers high. His cockpit was on the ground in a base near Las Vegas, inside a cold container full of computers and 8 different screens. The work was in exhausting rotating shifts, sometimes for 10 hours straight. And Tanner emphasizes that the work is always in pairs. There is the pilot, who controls the plane and fires the weapon, and the sensor operator, like him, who was the eyes. The operator finds the target, zooms in, and aims the laser that guides the weapon. It needs 2 people because a computer doesn't have the human precision to aim at something that moves. In surveillance, they used color cameras for details and infrared to see heat. Sometimes they found a car just because one wheel was hotter. Tanner says that surveillance could be long, observing someone's pattern of life for months or even years. But it could also be fast. Hey, there's a guy firing a mortar. In infrared, the tube glowed. In 30 seconds, they found him and received authorization. To attack, authorization was needed from the chain of command. The bosses analyzed everything. They only gave the okay with 99% certainty unless it was an active threat, like the mortar one. When the authorization came, the process was surgical. The weapon was laser guided. Tanner had a crosshair on the screen where he aimed, the missile went. The missile took 30 to 40 seconds to arrive. In those 40 seconds, the responsibility was all his. Keep a steady hand and most importantly, not forget to turn on the laser, otherwise the missile would get lost. If those 40 seconds of pure tension that Tanner had to live through deserve your recognition, if you enjoy understanding this level of behind-the-scenes detail, you know what to do. Leave a like and leave the hype. Of course, it didn't always go perfectly. They always had to think about the unexpected. One time, they had to abort an attack. The missile was already flying when the target car started driving towards a gas station. In less than a second, Tanner had to divert the laser to an open field. The missile exploded there safely. The decision to abort also depended on the importance of the target. A very high-value target was harder to abort. Tanner got into this at 18, right after school. A recruiter told him he would be watching convoys. He thought it sounded cool and agreed, but he had no idea he would be at the tip of the spear. His first official attack was in 2013 against a group in a cave. Right after the impact, he had to re-attack someone who ran. At that moment, he says he could only think about the technical part. I have to hit it. I can't mess this up. There was no time to think that he was taking a life. He had no idea how that was changing him. But these images get burned in. Tanner says he has thousands of scenes like that in his head. What affected him most wasn't the attack itself, it was what they saw after. He saw a man basically get cut in half by a missile, and his wife dragged what was left of his body across a field. He will never forget the despair on her face. Seeing people get hurt, that was what was hard. There was another time. Two guys walking down an alley. One pulled out a gun and shot the other. Tanner was there, 12,000 kilometers away, watching the guy bleed to death. The shooter left. Then the radio said, "Okay, follow the guy who shot," and he had to go. He just watched someone die, but he had no time to process it. Tanner guarantees he never disobeyed an order and is proud of the work, but he was not the least bit emotionally prepared for the weight of it. He has a friend who heard from a doctor, "How can you have trauma if you didn't even leave the country?" That's the punch in the gut. The problem doesn't show up at the time, it shows up when you get out. The worst thing people say, according to him, is that the job looks like a video game. That hurts a lot. There is no reset button. His biggest concern for the future is artificial intelligence. If one day they take the human out of the life or death decision. For him, dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder is about talking, helping others see they are not alone. He left the army in 2018. His body was exhausted and the pay was very low, about $38,000 a year, for so much mental stress. Today, the trauma still affects him. The anxiety is high, it's hard to trust people, it's hard to talk to family, because if the person didn't sit in that chair, they don't understand. Now that you have heard Tanner's full story, from the laser side to the images he can't forget, what shocked you the most? Was it discovering the real psychological price of this job? Or was it the way society still treats it, like the prejudice of thinking it's just a video game? Or the low pay for such a giant responsibility? I really want to know your opinion here in the comments. And if you think it's important to hear real stories like this, even if they are heavy, to understand the side that nobody shows, the best way to support this work is simple. Leave a like and leave the hype. That's how we know you want more true content around here.